Ben Johnson's gone. Aaron Glenn now leaving Detroit as well.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Matt Derry with you. It is the Locked On Lions on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today, a Wednesday, January 22nd, and a Thursday, January 23rd. Thank you for making us your first listen. Thanks for checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Shout out to our everydayers that are out there that watch and listen to the podcast daily. Talked to my man Scott Donnellan today. He's an everydayer. The great Brooke Police, met her today. She loves the Lions. Thanks to everybody that checks us out, watches us on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel as well. Chris Drew and Joe Allen, my boys, you know, these guys are always checking in. The Harbor Springs Insider, one of our everydayers. Harbor Springs Insider sent me a little message today that he's hearing that some local college assistants are lurking around 222 as well as Ford Field. And the Harbor Springs Insider knows his stuff. Locked On Lions today brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Lot to do on the show today. Aaron Glenn is heading to the New York Jets on a reported 5-year deal. We'll talk about that. The coaching carousel updates. Other Lions assistants are leaving. Other Lions assistants are rumored to be leaving. Who's going to stay? We don't know. We'll get into that coming up momentarily. Also, Ben Johnson spoke at a noon press conference today, 11 o'clock Central in Chicago at Hallis Hall up there in beautiful Lake Forest, Illinois, and took a little shot at the Packers, which I kind of enjoyed. And a message from me at the end of the podcast today in response to some of our YouTube commenters. I want to just set the record straight on some things, but all is well, all is good. Look, we know we've been talking about this the last few days. The Detroit Lions have been so successful. The Lions have been an organization that has been a model organization for many NFL teams to try and become. They've been the model. They've been consistent. They have built something over the last 4 years that has been special, and they've done it the right way. Good ownership, owners staying out of the way, excellent stewards, all right, of the franchise, like a Chris Spielman. Heck, even 222 Rodwood Drive. All right, then you throw in Brad Holmes as GM, Dan Campbell as head coach, keeping the proper people around that needed to stick around, like Ben Johnson, who, of course, was a Matt Patricia hire. And now they are being rated, as we've talked about. Today, no surprise, Aaron Glenn reportedly is going to get a 5-year contract to become the next head coach of the New York Jets. It sounds like Lance Newmark, who, of course, worked with AG and worked in Detroit for many, many years, could be the general manager. He is the assistant GM of the Washington Commanders. But Aaron Glenn deserves this opportunity. All right. Jokingly on this podcast for years, I used to refer to him as future head coach Aaron Glenn because the defense wasn't getting any better. And yet he was so highly regarded. Players loved him. Opposing players loved him. He was one of the most popular assistants in all of the league. And I kind of joked, how can you be a future head coach when your defense ranks near the bottom every year? And it was a struggle for the first few years for AG in Detroit as defensive coordinator. Fast forward to the last couple of years, this defense has made marked improvement. And this year, with everybody on the injured list, everybody, you were down to, think about this for a second for the last game. You're down to Maurice Norris, some guy named Stanley. You have nobody. Quan Alexander was playing snaps. Jamal Adams was playing snaps. This isn't 2015 Quan Alexander or 2016 Jamal Adams. Jalen Reeves-Maben, who's been mostly a special teamer, and he's improved, but he's haven't had to start games at linebacker. Al-Qadim Muhammad went from the practice squad to a starter. Jonah Williams went from the Broncos practice squad, or Miles Adams, Seattle's practice squad. These guys are playing major snaps. I mean, number 40, Maurice Norris played one defensive snap during the season. And he's out there playing 20, 30 snaps in a playoff game. Aaron Glenn deserves a ton of credit for what he did as defensive coordinator. And he's a leader of men. The guys love him. He fires the players up. He's an excellent defensive backs coach and deserves this chance. And I salute him. I really do. I'm happy for him. He's a former New York Jet. He has been there and played in some big games there as a cornerback. He knows that team. He knows that franchise. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Ben Johnson goes to Chicago, where the Bears have been a laughingstock. The New York Jets have the longest streak without making the playoffs in all the NFL. They've been a joke under Woody Johnson and all of that circus that surrounded Robert Saleh this year, and Joe Douglas, and of course, Aaron Rodgers. I think the last thing Aaron Glenn would want to do is bring back Aaron Rodgers, but he's going back to a team he had a lot of success with as a player, as a Pro Bowl cornerback, and he's taken over in New York in a tough media town where I think he can handle it. They've needed discipline with that organization, and he's going to bring it. So congratulations to Aaron Glenn for getting this opportunity. Like we said, as a time of recording right now, it's going to be a reported 5-year deal. What does that mean for the Lions? Well, first and foremost, reports have surfaced that some of the names that Aaron Glenn might take with him, only one name on that list, which included guys like Todd Haley and others, had Detroit ties, and that's Mark Brunell. Brunell, of course, is currently the quarterback's coach for the Lions. According to Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune, who covers the Bears, he does not foresee Ben Johnson bringing anybody from Detroit with him. And Brad Biggs has covered the Lions, or I should say covered the Bears for a long time. If I can find the exact tweet here, just so I can read this to you. Brad Biggs: does not sound like Bears will be a destination for Lions O-line coach Hank Fraley. Perhaps Ben Johnson does get an assistant from Detroit to join him, but Fraley is not going as expected. Johnson isn't going to raid Dan Campbell's staff. We'll get to all of this in a second, but the bottom line is maybe Brunell to New York. That's all we've seen so far. That could change. Replacing Aaron Glenn here in Detroit, I think within the next day or two, you're going to hear Kelvin Shepard's name come up as the new defensive coordinator. Shep, as he's known, has been a fantastic linebackers coach here. Talk about a leader of men and somebody that goes crazy on the sidelines, somebody that is beloved in that locker room. Kelvin Shepard, I believe, is ready to be the D coordinator. Aaron Glenn has been helping groom him for that position, and that's the name I hear. I think the Lions are going to take a lot more time in deciding on the OC. I could be wrong. And we talked about Hank Fraley maybe staying, or what about Tanner Engstrand, or what about Scotty Montgomery, or Antoine Randall L., or do the Lions go with somebody from the outside? Justin Rogers at Detroit Football Network suggested some names, including somebody like Frank Reich. And look, the Lions could go get Robert Saleh to be their defensive coordinator. But if you want to keep Kelvin Shepard here and keep him happy, I think he's ready to be the DC. So let's see what happens there. As far as carousel updates, let's do that coming up next. I usually do two things, but let's do carousel updates and Ben Johnson presser. We will do that coming up next right here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions. Thank you for making us your first listen, everybody. And checking us out, really, wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Odyssey, and, of course, on the YouTubes. And our friends at Locked On Lions today, brought to you by our friends, not our friends, it's our show. We're brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, New customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. We got NFC Championship game this weekend, Commanders and Eagles. We got AFC Championship game, Buffalo at the Chiefs. You want to get in on the action? Go to FanDuel. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, back on Locked On Lions. This is a Wednesday edition, chasing down possibly a guest or two the next couple of days. Certainly, Ben Johnson landed in Chicago yesterday. Today spoke with the media. We'll recap some of that for you. Also, the coaching carousel and the carousel updates continue. I said before, Mark Brunell could be going to New York and joining Aaron Glenn with the Jets. We will have to see about that. Remember something here. All right. Dallas hasn't entered the chat yet. The Saints haven't entered the chat yet, really, in terms of when they get their head coach, who could they poach from Detroit? So there's still time with all of this. If you're Dan Campbell and the staff right now, you're trying your best to retain as many people as you can. You know he wants to keep Tanner Engstrand, the passing game coordinator. You know Kelvin Shepard he wants to keep. Today, he lost Terrell Williams. We talked about this a little bit on the show yesterday. But Terrell Williams, the very fine defensive line coach, only spent one season in Detroit. It seems like every year the Lions have a new D-line coach. They've been through, I think, 3 now in the 4 years under Dan Campbell. The Davis dude and the guy who went down to Carolina, whose name escapes me, with Deuce Staley. Oh, gosh, my memory today is terrible. And now Terrell Williams has been officially named the defensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans. He will join Mike Vrabel, who he worked with, or excuse me, the New England Patriots. I'm sorry. The Boston Patriots. That's an old Richard Christie bit. Let's see if anybody, any of my commenters know what that is. But yes, Terrell Williams is going to New England. He is getting a nice elevation from D-line coach here to defensive coordinator under his friend Mike Vrabel, who he worked with for years as D-line coach down in Nashville. Good opportunity for Terrell Williams, so highly regarded. We had Andrew Siciliano on the show yesterday, and he was talking about working with Terrell Williams down at the Senior Bowl a few years ago when he was the head coach, one of the head coaches down there for the two teams at the Senior Bowl. So the Lions are going to have to replace Terrell Williams and find a new D-line coach. So stay tuned on that. Did a nice job. And again, tough job this year for Terrell Williams because of all the injuries that took place along the defensive line, losing Aiden Hutchinson, losing Aleem McNeil, losing Josh Paschal for a time. Keep an eye on Levi Onwuzurike to New England. When you go and you move into a new house, you want to put some of your own furniture in there. And certainly, Levi Onwuzurike knows Terrell Williams and vice versa. Levi is going to be a free agent. The Lions cannot sign everybody. It's just impossible. You want to, you need to, you want to keep good players around. Levi had a really good season this year. PFF graded him out very highly, but that could be a guy where, look, the Lions still have to pay Aiden Hutchinson, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph down the road. They've got players that they want to retain on this roster. Carlton Davis, Amik Robertson, you know they want to keep. So you've got DJ Reader for another year. You've got Aleem McNeil re-signed. I don't think Levi Onwuzurike is going to want to be the third D tackle again. So keep an eye on New England, certainly. Terrell Williams will likely put a very good word in for him with Mike Vrabel, the new head coach up there with the Patriots. All right. Ben Johnson introduced to the media today in Chicago as he had his introductory press conference with the Bears. Ben Johnson did thank, by the way, for those of you calling him Benedict Johnson, come on. What do you want him to do? He's getting paid $13 million. His wife wanted to live in the suburbs of Chicago. Everybody, man, I love Lions fans. Ben Johnson did thank Sheila Ford Hamp. He did thank Dan Campbell. He did thank Rodney Wood. He did thank Mike Disner. He mentioned Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Frank Ragnow. And he said one of the hardest things, and Dan Campbell too, one of the hardest things to do is to leave a group of men that you love, Johnson said today. I'll forever be impacted by St. Brown, Goff, Ragnow. I could go on and on. As far as Dan Campbell goes, Ben Johnson said, Dan is more than just a colleague to me. He's a friend. He's a mentor. He's a man that trusted me when he didn't need to. And I will forever be in his debt and respect the heck out of him. He's an amazing person. One time someone told me he's a unicorn, and could not be more truer words than that. When asked about why the Bears, Johnson said, number one, he loves the city of Chicago. He's been traveling with his family every summer to go to Cubs games. He thinks the Bears roster is, quote, stocked and loaded, and he wanted to stay in the NFC North. As he said, I've got tremendous amount of respect for the coaches and players in this league. I've competed against them for the past 3 years. Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell. You talk about two guys who are up for Coach of the Year awards as the season ends here. I wanted to stay in this division. I know it's the toughest division in football right now, etc. Then he went on to say, and to be quite frank with you, I kind of enjoyed beating Matt LaFleur twice a year. Ooh, you want to talk about somebody, end quote. You want to talk about somebody that is playing the crowd. If you know anything about Bears fans, all right, you know anything about Chicago, they despise the Packers. Packers-Bears is a cool rivalry. So Johnson took a little shot at the Packers there by saying he kind of enjoyed beating Matt LaFleur twice a year, which is pretty crazy. I love that. Johnson said that the Bears, he thought, were going to give the Lions the most problems this year. He's been looking at their roster for the last couple of years. Quote, going into the season, I felt like this place was a sleeping giant. To be honest with you, I personally was more concerned about the Chicago Bears than I was anybody else in this division. There were a number of reasons why that did not unfold, which that's why I'm here. I'll get to the bottom of that. We'll see if we can get that corrected and cleaned up. End quote. Here's the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Johnson would have left last year if Matt Eberflus wasn't given one more lifeline. It sounds like Ben Johnson has been thinking about the Bears job for 2 years. It really does. For him to say he was worried more about the Bears than any other team in the division, there's something about this roster that he really likes. Now, again, his wife Jessica might have told him, Ben, we got to move to Chicago. Chicago's great. It's a great city. Right? Suburbs are great. Whether he wants to live by Hallis Hall and Lake Forest, or he wants to live at Highland Park, or wherever. Have you been to Evanston? Evanston is gorgeous, beautiful, where Northwestern is. But it sounds like Ben Johnson has had his eye on this Bears job for a couple of years now. He was speaking very, very highly of them. Again, I will say this to Ben, if you are watching. I don't think he is, but hey, let's have some fun with it. The Bears have been a tire fire for decades. Other than Lovie Smith and Mike Ditka, that place is where coaches have gone to absolutely rot. So whether, the Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles situation, I don't know. I think that that's a tough spot to go to but ownership was willing to fork over $13 million for him. And he really likes Caleb Williams. And maybe he and Ryan Poles, who have a little bit of a history together, are going to work through this. They've got good draft capital. They've got some cap space. There's some defensive players there that are good. But he needs to be drafting 2 or 3 offensive linemen and probably signing a couple too. Because where Ben Johnson buttered his bread with this franchise, and he did a whale of a job as offensive coordinator, was with that offensive line. And how good Frank Ragnow is, and how good Penei Sewell is, and how good Kevin Zeitler is, and how good Taylor Decker has been. Those are big-time players. You win up front, and Ben Johnson knows that. Caleb Williams can do all the magic in the world, paint his nails and do it up. But if they're not blocking for him, he'll be on his ass like he was a few weeks ago when the Lions knocked him down seemingly every play. Interesting comments, certainly, from Ben Johnson. If you want to be our call of the day, which we will have a new call of the day tomorrow, go to speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page. That's speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page if you want to be our call of the day. When we come back, I have a little message. I needed a little reset with Lions fans, which we will do coming up next. Got a new sponsor here on Locked On Lions. It's Talkspace. Therapy is a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, and communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can certainly be a challenge. That's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace, a leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours. And it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home and even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize mental health. That is absolutely awesome. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL. Enter the promo code SPACE, SPACE 80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL. Enter promo code SPACE 80 and get $80 off your first month and show your support for Locked On Lions. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL. Promo code SPACE 80. All right, I'm going to do a little storytelling here on a Wednesday, Locked On Lions. Again, if you missed Andrew Siciliano yesterday, go back and check that podcast out. I made the mistake. Maybe it wasn't a mistake, but last night I decided to scroll through the old YouTube comments. And look, I love our listeners. I love all of you. I'm a fan like you're a fan. We're all fans. We want the Lions to win. Go on my YouTube page and look at the amount of viewers we got. Go on Apple Podcasts and click on popular shows or top shows and go to sports. All right. Locked On Lions is in the top 100 on Apple Podcasts, and only Locked On Bills does better than us on the whole network on Apple Podcasts. Now, sometimes Locked On Packers gets ahead of us, Locked On Fantasy Basketball, Locked On Auburn. There's a lot of great shows. We've had a great run here, and it's all because of you guys, the fans. So I go on my YouTube comments yesterday, which I check out from time to time, and I'm getting blitzed by you guys. Don't tell us how to feel, Derry. Benedict Johnson, you're telling us how we should feel. No, I guys, go back to Cleveland. He's a Browns fan. I'm not a Browns fan. I've been a Browns fan since 1999. I'm a Lions fan. I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere. When David Locke started this network and called me in May of 2016, he originally asked me to do the Locked On Pistons show because he knew of my relationship with the Pistons, and I love the Pistons. I'm a Pistons fan. I did pre and post for Pistons on the radio for 12 years. But you know what I told David? I want to do the Lions show. Give me the Lions show. He went, take it. And we hired my man, Matt Shook, to start the Pistons show back in 2016. I'm invested. Every single day. I watch every game. I don't know what you guys are talking about. You should be furious that it's over. This sucks. I never said to tell you how to feel. I just said, in my opinion, 15-2 was a really good year. Should you be devastated that they lost? Yes. Am I still running into people right now that still can't believe that that the season's over and they're not playing this weekend and not having an NFC Championship game at 3:00 down at the corner of Brush and Adams? Of course. I'm sorry. I feel horrible for Lions fans because I feel bad too. I do. So I don't know what I said yesterday. Sometimes I miss some things that I say. If I put it out there that I was trying to tell everybody how to feel and to not be upset, I do think some of this Ben Johnson stuff, being mad at him and calling him Benedict Johnson, I think is a little over the top. It's funny. All right. And we're going to root against him. I hope Ben Johnson fails. I do. I hope he goes to Chicago and does what John Fox did and Matt Eberflus did and Matt Nagy did and Mark Trestman did and Dave Wanstead did. I hope he fails. I want the Lions to win for sure. This has been an unbelievable run these last 2+ years. I hope I wasn't telling anybody how to feel or to tell them not to be upset or anything else. I'm rooting for the Lions. I root for Jameson Williams. I want him to do well. That dude is a heavy-duty talent. When he's on the ground, humping the ground after a touchdown, yeah, sometimes I think he's a little immature. I'm going to tell it like it is. I mean, do you want me to do a backflip here that the Lions signed Ronnie Bell to a futures contract, the former Michigan wide receiver? I can do that if you want. I don't know what you want from me. I love our audience. I'm here because of you. I have such great interactions with all of you, whether you're hitting me up on Twitter or Blue Sky or Facebook or the YouTube commenters, for the most part, are good. Yesterday, I was getting raked over the coals for my comments. I don't know what if I said something to upset you guys. Browns. I don't care about the Browns. I care about the Lions. I'm a fan like you guys. I'm not a reporter. So I'm passionate. I'm into it. I want them to do well. And you know what? They're going to be good next year. They are. This team is going to be good next year. They're going to lose a lot of coaches. They're going to lose guys in the front office. They'll replace them. I know what happened in Philly 2 years ago when Shane Steichen left and Jonathan Gannon left, and the Eagles' offense and defense were terrible. And they ended up having to use Matt Patricia. All right. But losing both coordinators, which has only happened, I think, twice in the last 12 years. I think the Bengals lost Mike Zimmer and Jay Gruden years ago as well. When those two left, Marvin Lewis's staff, it's an anomaly that this stuff happens. But that's because teams recognize how good the Lions have been. That's my message. We're back again with a Thursday Locked On Lions tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out. As always, go Lions.